The Miami Hurricanes have the blueprint to beat the Louisville Cardinals on Saturday, but can they execute it?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Dono, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode of Locked On Canes, we're going to talk some Miami recruiting nuggets. You've got a big-time target making an announcement later this week. You've got another big-time target who lists Miami now as a finalist. You have some very important visitors who are going to be at the Florida State game later this month. We're going to talk about the midseason improvements that Miami must make now. We're halfway through this thing, coming off the bye week, and yeah, we're going to talk keys to victory for the Miami Hurricanes against the Louisville Cardinals this Saturday at 12 noon on the road. We get a question from a Locked On Canes insider named Will304 who says, and by the way, this is a flattering nickname that I probably do not deserve if you've seen some of my betting slips, but he says, Donostradamus, what are the keys to victory for Miami on Saturday? And listen, I think that there are, especially when it comes to Miami's offense, there are favorable matchups here. There are stats on both sides of the football that actually play in Miami's favor. I think there are reasons why the Hurricanes are 4.5-point favorites on the road at Louisville. But the most important key for me is, and Jalen Rivers being back at starting left tackle is going to help. Give Cam Ward enough protection and enough time to make plays both inside and outside the pocket. We know Louisville is going to try not only to sack Cam Ward, and they've actually surprisingly not put up nearly as many sacks as we thought Louisville would. Ashton Gelati, who had 11 sacks last year, only has 2 so far for them midway through the season, but they have a dangerous defensive line. Miami needs to give Cam Ward protection, and they need to give him time. Because when I talk about that blueprint, I thought Canesport.com made a really good point that in many ways, SMU, who beat Louisville a couple of weeks ago, they showed some of the vulnerabilities of that Cardinals defense. They were vulnerable against SMU quarterback Kevin Jennings, who's basically the Kirkland signature version of Cam Ward, like a talented dual threat quarterback, but he's not on Ward's level. So if Ward can make plays both with his legs, which I think is inevitable based on what we've seen in recent weeks, he's been dynamic, not only making plays, moving the chains and scoring touchdowns on the ground, but of course, making those off-schedule throws. Miami can have a lot of success with Cam Ward. And, Louisville, their passing defense so far this year, they rank 70th in the country in passing yards allowed. So for Miami's offense, and we'd also like to establish the running game, but we know that the straw that stirs the drink is Cam Ward and Miami's passing game. And I think that there are opportunities Miami can have in this game, and there are vulnerabilities on Louisville's side that Miami can exploit in this one. For the Hurricanes on defense, pressuring Tyler Shough, the Louisville quarterback. That's something Miami is going to try to do, and that's going to be a key here. Because if you give Shough a clean pocket and time to throw, he can make explosive plays and he can carve you up. Miami needs to protect the football. We know that. And the big thing for me, and obviously, keeping the turnovers to a minimum is a key for every game. When it comes to Miami, an evergreen key for this team ever since the first game of the year, where somehow against Florida, Miami only committed 2 penalties in that opening game. But since then, we've seen 9 penalties, 11 penalties, 9 penalties committed. Miami's got to keep the dumb penalties down because that's plagued them throughout the year. Because on the flip side of that, guys, if Miami can keep their mistakes to a minimum, Louisville's probably been even worse when it comes to making mistakes and shooting themselves in the foot. So if Miami can avoid beating themselves, Louisville might just beat themselves because they're The Cardinals are tied for 57th in the country in turnover margin, which is bang average. Miami's tied for 25th in turnover margin. So I know we all look at, that Virginia Tech game, which was a poor game when it came to turning the football over. Miami, for the most part, has done let's say, a comparatively better job taking care of the football than Louisville. Louisville has been prone to mistakes. Now, of course, and we're going to talk more about, Miami's defensive secondary throughout this episode of Locked On Canes, because obviously you need to avoid those coverage breakdowns because, again, a guy like Ja'Cory Brooks, really talented wide receiver for Louisville, can really hurt you downfield if you're not on your A game from a communication and an assignment standpoint. The other thing, though, is tackling. Miami needs to be sharp there. And of course, we all look at the Virginia Tech game from a few weeks ago. That's when Miami had their worst tackling performance of the season. They missed over 20 tackles in that game. I was actually surprised. I looked back at the Pro Football Focus numbers from the Cal game. Miami only missed 7 tackles in the Cal game. The coverage breakdowns were the real problem there, not so much the tackling, but the tackling has to be good or great in this one. Because if you're not tackling well, you remember, a few weeks ago when Virginia Tech running back Bashal Tutin really gave Miami a tough time and they couldn't bring the guy down. You're facing another really good running back this week, Isaac Brown, who's been the star in the backfield for Louisville. He's got over 500 yards already this season, had about 150 yards last week against Virginia. That's one of, maybe not the best, but one of the better running backs that you faced so far this year, the reigning ACC Rookie of the Week. So Miami needs to be tackling well in this game. So good question there by Will304. And by the way, we're taking questions on this episode from the Locked On Canes Insiders. So if you want to become a Locked On Canes Insider, click the link in the show description below. Try it free for 14 days and then $4.99 a month after that. If you want to opt in, you don't have to opt in if you don't want to. You get text messages directly from my phone to yours. You can ask me questions on there. We get this question from Jake, who says, hey, do you think we will see some changes in the defensive secondary this week after last week's disaster, whether it's scheme or different corners getting the start or getting more playing time? I don't know, how many personnel changes that they can actually make. I don't know how much longer Damari Brown is going to be out, but I'm not necessarily expecting him back this week. You'd love to have him. He's been, of course, injured since the first game of the season, unfortunately. I'd like to see Zaquan Patterson getting some more playing time down the road. I don't know if this is the week for that. I think most of the changes Miami has to make are just internalizing the scheme, improving the communication in the defensive backfield, because I don't think it was so much problems with the actual athletes. I think it was more problems with breakdowns in coverage. So I think the scheme changes, just internalizing the scheme a little bit better. I think those are the sort of things that we're going to look for. And of course, you hope that your pass rush has a lot of success, because if the defensive backs only have to cover for 2 or 3 seconds instead of 5 or 6 seconds, it's going to make it a lot easier, not to have assignment breakdowns back there. So I don't know how many actual personnel changes they can make, but I think some schematic changes or mental adjustments are going to be what we see there. Folks, we have a lot more to talk about on this episode of Locked On Canes, including more reasons to be optimistic and reasons to be concerned about this game. We're going to talk about Miami's running attack and what they can do heading into this Louisville matchup. Are we going to see big plays from Damien Martinez, Mark Fletcher, Jordan Lyle, and company? And yeah, we've got some recruiting info to talk about, because this is a big week and this is a really big month when it comes to recruiting as we make that march towards National Signing Day in December. So, my friends, we're only getting started. It's game week. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I already know you're keeping it locked to GameTime. Guys, this is the only ticket app that I use, because you're getting the best features and the best deals. I'm looking at sporting events in our area coming up. Vancouver Canucks at the Florida Panthers tomorrow night. You can get in for $7. $7 tickets are available right now at GameTime. Florida State at Miami. I'm looking at tickets starting at $109 for that big game against the Seminoles coming up on October 26th. You guys want to check out the GameTime app. There's a new feature called GameTime Picks that filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Guys, I love the all-in pricing feature. It shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. Thank you so much for making this Wednesday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Make sure for your next listen, you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I, we take you through the conference, big football stories, big games, previews, storylines, conference realignment rumors, all that good stuff. Locked On ACC, much like Locked On Canes, it's available free wherever you get your podcasts, and it's available free on YouTube. We got a related question about the secondary. Jeff wants to know, are there any updates on Damari Brown? Any idea when he'll be ready to go? No, I don't have any updates on that. I just, all I can say is get well soon, because Damari Brown, I watched that young man make big strides throughout spring practice and fall practice, really got bigger and stronger, and was playing really well, was looking good in that Florida game before he got injured. So I don't know when, but I cannot wait to see Damari back in the lineup. That would be awesome. We get this question that says, hey, our defense has been exposed over different passing schemes. Have they changed the defense plays or players to adjust to the opponent? I'm looking forward to seeing what Miami's defense looks like this coming Saturday, because remember, you got the extra week to prepare, which is always helpful, because Miami got to start where Louisville had to get through Virginia, and that was dicey. They almost lost that game. So Louisville had to spend, the first week of the last two focusing on the Virginia Cavaliers before they could turn the page to Miami. Miami has been in Louisville mode for 2 weeks leading up to this game. And so they know the challenges at hand. They know that Louisville's got dangerous receivers and a quarterback who's 25 years old. Like Tyler Shough has been around for a very, very long time. He's arguably having his best year because he's been healthy, which is something he's struggled with in recent years. And he's also got, a really, really quarterback-friendly head coach in Jeff Brom, who's helping him bring out his best this year. So, I would assume that this is going to be, hopefully, fingers crossed, some of the best scheming Miami's done this year, because you get that extra week to prepare for a really dangerous opponent. Mr. Valentine wants to know, will Damien Martinez have a breakout game in rushing? Honestly, I don't even care. I don't care who it is what I mean. Like, I'm not saying I don't care about Damien Martinez. I love Damien Martinez, and he's been certainly your best option in the red zone when it comes to running for touchdowns. But whether it's Damien Martinez breaking out or Mark Fletcher breaking out, who was our Roy Player of the Week this week, or AJ Allen, who, I think probably deserves a little bit more burn in that backfield, or Jordan Lyle, who's made the most of his opportunities, or Chris Johnson. I don't care where you line that dude up. Just get him the football in space because he's lightning fast, or all the above, right? I don't care who it is. But I do think that by the way, we saw some positive signs for Miami's running game, in the Cal game. They really kind of established themselves earlier in that contest. And, of course, there wasn't really much complimentary football getting played. So Miami had to kind of go to their 2-minute drill for most of that game. But, I don't care, honestly, like whichever running back breaks out, Damien Martinez, Fletcher, anybody, I will take it. I don't care who it is. Let's just get the running game early, because this would be, another game where if you really want to take some of that pressure off of Cam Ward when you're going up against a dangerous defensive line, if you can make that defense a little bit more honest. And Louisville doesn't bring pressure or blitz a whole lot. Like they tend to rush 4 and sometimes even rush 3. But whatever you can do to take some pressure off of that defense would be welcomed. We get this question from, I love this dude, Notre Dame Hater 85, who says, hey, Mr. Dono, I am in Gatlinburg, Tennessee on my honeymoon. He says, however, the honeymoon ends in Louisville on Saturday at noon. Make me feel good about this game before I walk into that stadium running my mouth. He says he will send pics. Well, Andy Hayter, congratulations on the honeymoon. And I already know you found an amazing wife, because if she actually let you plan the honeymoon around going to Louisville for that game on Saturday, you found yourself a keeper. Do whatever you can. Do whatever you can to keep her happy for the rest of your lives, because you found yourself a keeper if she lets you plan the honeymoon around the Louisville game. Listen, Andy, you should always feel good, because first of all, you're going to be in that stadium representing one of the most well-known, one of the most hated, but one of the most intriguing brands in all of sports. When you've got that U and you're throwing that U up in the stadium, you can already feel proud that you're doing that. You can feel proud that you have the guy who, for my money, is the best quarterback in the country lining up for you. Ruben Hurricane Bain is back for the second straight game. Jalen Rivers is coming back this week. Miami's undefeated. They're in the top 10. So be proud, man. And hopefully, ND Hater, I hope for you and for everybody who's going to be in that stadium, because a lot of Miami fans have hit me up that they're going to be at that Louisville game. I'm not going to be there, so I'm having FOMO right now. I feel left out. But for all the Miami fans who are going to be in attendance for that football game, I hope that the team puts on the kind of performance for you guys that really makes you proud, because over the years, I don't have to tell you guys, but over the years, Miami has had some tough losses in Louisville. So hopefully we turn that around and get a big win in that building this week. And I'm happy for you. But you should feel excited about this team, because again, I think in a lot of ways Miami matches up well against the Cardinals. We get this question that says, hey, next year we will be without Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George, Sam Brown. How important is it, in your opinion, that we start getting guys like Nikar and JoJo Trader some playing time with the starters? They're going to be heavily relied upon next year to step up, and I'm a little worried about the drop-off, if it's going to be bigger than we want, if they don't get some playing time moving forward, especially with the decline in production from a couple of the guys who are playing now. The thing is, I think right now the most important thing is to keep winning. And listen, that if there's any member of the current receiving rotation who stops producing, then hopefully, later in the year, JoJo, Nikar, even Chance Robinson, Ray Joseph get more. Ray has gotten some opportunities already this year, but I think the winning games is the most important thing. And if you do have opportunities to get these guys more playing time, great. But you can't coach for next year today. Like you have to be coaching for right now. But I know what you're saying. And listen, it's up to those players to work hard heading into next year to be ready. And you got to trust and hope that they will. I'm glad that Isaiah Horton is going to be back next year, because he's already one of the studs in the receiving core right now. He's going to be a stud in that receiving core next year. But yeah, unfortunately, you can't really coach for tomorrow today. You have to play the guys who are going to win you games right now. But I appreciate the question. We get this one from Dat Dude 239, who says, hey, how do you judge Coach Cristobal and his staff on in-game adjustments and time management so far this season? I can't emphasize this enough. Time management has been an A++ so far this year. At any point this season, have you guys said, oh man, that terrible timeout that we took earlier, or that extra 10 seconds we ran off the clock, or that ridiculous play call cost us a game? Miami's not been perfect at 6-0, but the issues that they have not been of the game management or time management variety. In fact, you don't pull off 25-point and 18-point comebacks if you're not managing the clock in the fourth quarter very well. So when it comes to that standpoint, so far so good. And I think we can all commend Coach Cristobal on looking in the mirror after last season, on hiring or elevating a specific time management coach, someone who assists him in games in those situations, because whatever adjustments he's made since last year, seem to be paying dividends. So I give credit to Coach Cristobal, and also Miami has tended to be better in the second halves, especially fourth quarters in games this year. So you can say the adjustments have been good. Like sometimes they don't seem right from the beginning of the game, but when it comes to the adjustments that are being made at halftime, that stuff has been better. So I give them credit in that regard. We get this question from Oscar G, who says, "Hey, Tyler Barron's production has gone down in the past 2 games. Is that due to injury, level of competition, or the way teams are double teaming him?" He says, I think it's in terms of health goes. I don't know anything. I think he's been fine. In fact, I think Barron has still been productive. It's just he's not like been producing sacks at the same clip he was for the first couple of games. There are ebbs and flows. Like sacks can be streaky. Early in the season, he was on pace for like 25 sacks this year. Like there was no way that was ever going to happen. So I think Barron is fine. And I think that with Ruben Bain being back, that's also going to benefit him because it's going to take some pressure off of him. So there are just ebbs and flows when it comes to stats. I still see Barron affecting the games in very positive ways. A guy who's really stepped up on that defensive line has been Simeon Barrow. He's really been wreaking havoc for the past few games. So I'm not worried about Barron. Let me see. We get this one, says 2 questions here. With the rumors of Kirby Smart going to the NFL, does anyone think Mario Cristobal has aspirations of coaching in the NFL? No. First of all, Mario already has his dream job. I mean, bringing the U back to prominence, his alma mater, like this is what he's always wanted to do. And the other thing is, like with Mario Cristobal, his big superpower in coaching is recruiting. And that's not something you do in the NFL. Like I don't think he wants to take his biggest superpower away. So I think Cristobal is happy in the college game and specifically very happy where he is right now. There are certain coaches who maybe Kirby Smart, obviously Harbaugh has done it a couple of different times. Urban Meyer caught the NFL bug. Even, Nick Saban caught the NFL bug. And then after 2 years in Miami, he had enough. I need to go back to college. So there are certain coaches that are just built for the college aspect. And I think Mario is one of those. And we also got a question about penalties, about, Jacoby George getting baited into penalties. We just, the entire team, we just need to get that sort of discipline back. And I thought JG was showing a lot of progress first couple of games of the year because teams were really trying to bait him into penalties. We just need to get that focus and that discipline back. Speaking of Mario Cristobal's great superpower in recruiting, we'll talk a little bit more about that because there are some important players that we have in our notes for today, including DJ Pickett. We're going to get a decision in a couple of days from a Miami target in Elijah Griffin, 5-star, one of the best players in the country. How are the Hurricanes trending there? My friends, we are not done yet. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Keep it locked. We've been having a great time all season long at FanDuel.com. The Hurricanes are 4.5-point favorites this week against the Louisville Cardinals on the road. And if you're an NFL fan, I'm sure you are, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more in the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. Make sure you check out Locked On College Football. It's an awesome channel, an awesome show. Spencer McLaughlin takes you around all the big stories and all the big games each and every week. Much like this show, Locked On Canes, Locked On College Football is available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. All right, so we're getting into the final, less than the final 2 months before National Signing Day, class of 2025. And Miami they're going to keep trying to flip 5-star defensive back DJ Pickett from his commitment to LSU. We know about DJ's family ties to Miami. His cousin and close friend, Booker Pickett Jr., currently plays for the Hurricanes. His uncle, Booker Pickett Sr., played for Miami in the 90s, but Pickett has been committed since the summer to LSU. He's got a strong relationship with Corey Raymond, the LSU defensive backs coach, but I know Miami is not giving up there. And a couple things on DJ Pickett. He just put out on social media today, and, players will do this sometimes. This is not a smoking gun or anything, but he put out a cool photo, an edit of a photo with he and basically his entire family, cousins, parents, uncles, on campus at the University of Miami, with the caption, "You," with the U logo, "You are family," which, kind of tells you Miami is still in his thoughts. And we certainly know that Mario Cristobal, Lance Guidry, defensive coordinator, Chevis Jackson, defensive backs coach, have not given up in recruiting DJ Pickett. I'm sure his cousin Booker Pickett has also been in his ear as well. So the Hurricanes are going to keep working that. In fact, he's scheduled and expected to visit for the Florida State game on October 26th. So you can expect DJ to be at that game. Hopefully Miami puts on a show in that game against their rivals who have been down bad so far this year. So DJ Pickett, he's committed to LSU. Miami is not giving up. Meanwhile, there's a big announcement coming up in 2 days. 5-star defensive lineman, one of the most prized targets in the entire country, Elijah Griffin. He's scheduled to announce on Friday, and his 3 finalists are Georgia, Miami, and USC. Now, I know Miami has been pushing for this one, but I don't want to get anybody's hopes up 2 days away from the announcement, because if you follow the visits and you follow the trends, and he's from the Savannah area, so he's a lot closer to UGA, certainly, than Miami or especially USC. Elijah Griffin has been on Georgia's campus visiting a lot, including a recent visit for his birthday. I don't think he's been at Miami since the summer. It's been a while since he's visited. So Georgia is expected to be the pick there for Griffin. But I know Miami is going to continue to make a strong push for the next couple days and for the next couple months, because they're not going to give up before National Signing Day. And, Elijah Griffin and his family, they speak very highly of Hurricanes defensive line coach Jason Taylor. So I know Miami has been putting in the work there. They've been giving Elijah Griffin a lot to think about. So we'll see what happens this week. But my expectation is Georgia until proven otherwise. But I would be happy to be wrong about that one, believe me. Now, here's 4-star linebacker Kellen Wiley. He's a really good player. He's a teammate of Miami commit Gerard Pringle. He's at Armwood High School in the Tampa area. Kellen Wiley has narrowed down his list to 10 schools, which is like hardly narrowing it down. But Miami is among the final 10. Miami's been in the mix for him for a few months now. So Kellen Wiley's top 10 includes Miami, Alabama, USC, Maryland, Florida, Penn State, Florida State, Louisville, Georgia Tech, and Illinois. So we'll see what happens there for Kellen Wiley. But I know Miami's been very much in the mix for him for quite some time. I don't know if he's going to narrow that top 10 down to a top 5 or a top 3 before he announces, but Miami is in that final list for what that's worth. There are players that are committed to other schools. Miami is still after 4-star defensive lineman Jarquez Carter, committed to Ohio State. I think it was either 24/7 or On3 or both, where I saw he plans to visit Miami for the Florida State game. 4-star USC committed defensive end Hayden Lowe. Oh, I love that player. He's also expected to visit for the Florida State game. We'll see if Miami can potentially flip him from that USC commitment. And according to Gabby Urrutia at 24/7, even after, Miami last week landed, and we covered it on the show, they landed 4-star wide receiver Joshua Moore, who flipped from Florida. According to Gabby, Miami is still looking at additional receiver targets like 5-star Derek Meadows, 4-star Florida State commit Vernell Brown III is someone Miami is still looking at. And the Hurricanes are also still after other players committed to Florida, including Ben Hanks Jr., the 4-star defensive back. And I talked to some people who cover Florida last week, and they think Miami, after flipping Joshua Moore, Miami might not be done flipping players that are currently committed to the Gators. So we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, the job status of Billy Napier is not good, and that is going to hurt their recruiting in the short term. So, the vultures will start circling there, whether it's Miami or otherwise. Teams will be trying to flip players that are currently verbally committed to Florida. Folks, we're going to close out the rest of the week with some strong episodes, including On tomorrow's episode, we're going to do a Locked On crossover. It's going to be me with Locked On Canes with Dalton Pence from Locked On Louisville. We're going to preview. It's going to be on both of our channels. It's going to be a super simulcast. We're going to talk about the keys to the game for both sides, the strengths and the weaknesses from the Hurricanes and from the Cardinals, and we're going to make our predictions, and we're going to get you ready for that Saturday matchup between the Miami Hurricanes and the Louisville Cardinals. So tune in for our big crossover episode tomorrow. In the meantime, smash that like button. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Canes. Subscribe to the audio version at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods. And we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.